To say.
Guys, as you're joining, hi Evelyn. So because this is a very critical part of like this whole process. Hi Michelle.
Hello.
So guys, as you're joining, if you're feeling compelled, you want to hear, we always want to hear from you. So as we're waiting for people to join, please can you either type in the chat why you joined this conversation today, or what does black text mean to you? I Dr. Darlington Sabasi. Eskuda Chiedza, who's STM? Announce yourself, please.
I believe that Sandy Mtandwa, hi Rungana.
Oh my God, Doreen in the house. Hello.
Georgia.
Georgia in the house.
If I come to your house, can I just pop in?
Yes, you should. I came to your neighborhood this afternoon.
Oh no, we missed each other.
Is Rebecca my mano? Rebecca's iPhone. Danai, hi. Oh. Guys, as you're joining, please can you type in the chat why you're joining the session today, and or what does black text mean to you? Farang Sari, are we live on Facebook now?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. Farang Sari, are we live on Facebook now? Oh, sorry, you have to go on mute now.
Yes, we are.
Thank you. How do I? Let's just wait for people to join. Hi, Danai. Hi, Panashe Munda. I can't really see the rest of the name. This was Evelyn. Hello. Hi, Titch. The credit goes to Samanzanga on the music. This was a real discussion that we had, guys, trying to pick a song for today. It was intense. It was an intense debate. So I hope you all like the song. You can all relate with the song in some way. I think let's get started. All right, guys. Well, okay. Well, happy Saturday, everybody, wherever you are right now. Ndine Mujare Rungano Nyambuya coming to you live from New York City, and very grateful and excited to be having this conversation that I think a lot of us have been wanting to have. And as always, we are grateful to Education Matters for allowing us the platform to host these conversations where we can learn from each other. And I will say, of course, anything we discuss here is not views of Education Matters, but Education Matters is really just providing us a platform to engage and exchange ideas. So today we're talking about Black text. That's the word that's out there. I don't know what it means. We'll hear from the panelists and from you guys, or supporting your family. And it's a follow-on from last week's session, right? So last week with Kudzi, we spoke about your personal finance 101. And for me, one of the key takeaways from that was that you need to have a personal financial plan. Now, I do think that for most of us on here, one of those line items that's going to be on your personal financial plan is supporting your family. So in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about BlackTech / supporting your family, how to think about it. We'll hear from our panelists from their experiences and observations as the older generation in this group of people that we are. I'm not going to call them sekurus and buyas, but they've lived a few more years of life of doing this, and so we're going to learn from them, from their experiences. I think the topic is really in the context of their own journeys. Now, this is a very sensitive topic, right? Or maybe it's not, but I just do want to say that please, let's respect each other's opinions. We want this to be a very open discussion. Feel free to say things in the chat, or whether it's in the chat on Zoom or on Facebook. We want this to be a very open conversation, but let's respect each other's opinions. Now, we're focusing today on how to incorporate managing family or supporting family or BlackTech into your personal financial plan. We're not going to talk about how it became, but for those who are interested in learning a little bit of the history, if you go to drdendede.com, there's a couple of articles that Chipo, who's also on the line, has written about the history, which I actually found to be quite useful in terms of trying to get a little bit of more context. Okay, so let's get started. Before we get started, I do want to do a shout out to my USAP alumni classmate, Kato, who turned 40 today. Is he on the line? I don't think he is, but Kato, happy birthday, 40. Wish you a lot more, and very, very happy for you. I hope you're enjoying yourself wherever you are today. Okay, so let's get started. We have 3 people on the panel today. I will do brief introductions of them, but I do want them to introduce themselves. And as always, the theme of this, guys, is that we want everybody to share their views. So please put your questions in the chat, put your comments in the chat as well, and we'll be monitoring them as we go. So I'm going to start with Samanzanga. He's not a Samanyika, but I like to make him a Samanyika myself. He's actually from Berengwe. But Samanzanga is the most creative actuary that I know. He's a jack of all trades. He's a big shot at Allstate in Chicago. And he is part of the first class of USAP. And then I'll introduce Fadzi Mujlandu, who we're in the same class of USAP. And Fadzi now is the educational advisor at the US Embassy in Harare. And so she comes with what would be a very interesting perspective, because she's worked with a lot of students who are studying abroad or even in the US, but also I'll let her finish the rest of the introduction herself. And then we have Molly Madziwa, who is, she is the founder of Macheke Sustainability Project. And Macheke Sustainability Project has been one of the friends of USAP over the years. But then she's also this like engineer who knows a lot of stuff that her title is Clinical Affairs Leader at Viz AI Silicon Valley. Don't know what that means, but we will hear from her. So to get us started, why don't we, I do want the panel to introduce themselves. So Fadzi, why don't we start with you with just telling everybody a little bit of who you are.
Hi everyone, thank you Ru for the formal introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us. I was born in a family of 8. I am the 6th. Out of the 8, the youngest girl, and I have always been the youngest in a group of friends, or the struggling. If I were an artist, I'd be the struggling artist in a group of friends and have always benefited from what we're terming Black text today. So I come to you as a recipient today. And
Thanks, Fadzi. Samanzanga.
Well, thanks, Rungano. So Rungano has found a way of pressing all my buttons, and I haven't found a way of hitting back.
Good luck. Good luck to you.
The only thing I get is I get to call you Rungano instead of Ru. So in terms of saying who I am, I always find this difficult because there's so many ways one can look at oneself. But today, I'll look at myself as my grandmother's grandson. On my father's side, my grandmother was, for whatever reason, I think she was more of the intellectual, or she would have been an intellectual, but she was also very strict. And then on my mom's side, she's very giving. I think of her as somebody who, she's the richest person I know. She has nothing, but she's the richest person. And I'll use an example. So when I was living in South Africa, I would get calls once in a while, but, Gogo doesn't have this thing. And then I would, it's always random. So I thought, well, let me just get a whole bunch of stuff, supplies that can last a year, and then I'm done with that. I don't have to worry about it because I'm a little disorganized, and I can do stuff periodically. I'm not that, I don't plan very well at times. So I said, well, let me do that. So I drove all the way to Gokwe, South, that's full. And then I gave her the stuff. Then a month later, I was talking to my cousin and said, well, yeah, what's the situation? Then she had nothing left. And like, what happened? She had given all away. So somebody comes and says, oh, Mzukuru, this, and that. And then I tried to say, no, you can't do this. We're gonna put conditions. Said, no. If you're gonna put conditions, then don't give me the stuff. So I have increasingly functioned my life that way to say, look, if the spirit so moves me to do that, I'm gonna do it. Of course, I draw the line somewhere. And so this Black text issue gets to who am I? How do I look at it? And when I look, certainly when I look at it from the perspective of my grandmother, it gives me a different answer than what the term Black text implies. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Samanzanga. And you went right into your view of Black text, which we're going to come back to again. But Molly, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, indeed. Hi, everybody. And if you don't mind, perhaps everyone, you can just write in the chat there to let us know where you are joining in from. I'm always very interested in the diversity of our audience, but also the thought and the school of perspective that's coming in. So my name is Molly Madziva, and I am the Director of Clinical Affairs at BizAI. It's actually a software company that is in artificial intelligence, really with a mission to improve how healthcare is delivered in the world. And so we are starting, of course, with the US, going into Europe and expanding. So at some point, no matter where you are in the world, you probably will hear about our work. Before I joined BizAI, I was actually at Abbott, and I was in the neuromodulation division unit there, also working in clinical research. I am a trained engineer, so prior to that, I was in R&D at a small startup company that actually invented a medical device that you'll be hearing from at some point, because it's now approved by the FDA. And this device actually warns patients before they have a heart attack. So I'm pretty, impressed about how far I've come as far as my work as an engineer, as a clinical scientist, and now as a leader in supporting the corporate sector here in the US. Beyond that, I really truly am a village girl. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. At the time when I was born, during the colonial times in 1975, we actually lived in the Shoshe village, and then my family was privileged enough to be able to move, or maybe I should say courageous enough, right, to move to Macheke, which is also another village where I now help to support sustainable development. A lot of this actually is what inspired me to, instead of getting a PhD in electrical engineering or software engineering, I actually got a PhD in sustainability and the aspect of educating and helping to transform mindsets when it comes to this concept of poverty. What is it? And how is it we can move from that vicious cycle of the identity of such. We'll talk a little bit more about that if you're so interested. One of my areas of deep interest is actually generational wealth, only because we do realize that unless we break the cycle at some point, continue to and stop passing on the baton. I think Dr. Terai Trent talks a lot about this in her work, passing the baton to the next generation. In her part, it's a different type of poverty when it comes to gender aspects of things, but I'm talking more about this financial perspective, but mostly the mindset. So hopefully we have a thriving conversation that goes beyond this room here where we are, this global Zoom room, and hopefully we can move it into action and also perhaps changing how we live and work together. Thank you.
That's Molly Madziwa for you all. She said her personal motto is kindness is key, kindness to self, kindness to the environment, and kindness to others. So let's get into the deep of this conversation. Let's start with, what does Black Text mean to you? And before that, actually, let me do shout outs, because we have South Africa in the house, Boston, Malaysia, Harare. We have a lot of Harare today. That's amazing. Arkansas, Cape Town. So shout out Seattle. So shout out to everybody who's joining us today. And so to the panelists, what does Black Text mean to you? Fadzi, do you want to kick us off? Please. Okay.
So when Ru asked me to be on this panel, my first reaction was to laugh. And the reason I laughed was I thought, oh my goodness, do I have any experience of like paying this Black Text? And I was like, I don't think so, but I have received so much help in my life. I have been a recipient of so much kindness. And so when she said Black Text, I was like, I don't agree with that topic of us helping each other. And it's a necessary evil in our context. And like this topic of generational wealth, there's so much historical baggage about why Black people haven't created that generational wealth. And like if you come from a family where you're first generation college student, you're first generation everything, never mind my Zesta beeping, sorry, you keep hearing it throughout the session. It's just Zesta misbehaving because Harare things happen. Back to Black Text. So I thought, who would want to pay tax if there was an option not to pay tax? I wouldn't, unless I truly believed in the cause. But for a lot of us, taxation is something that we have to do because it's taken out of your paycheck and you don't have any, like in Zim, it's 52% if you're at the highest income bracket. So would I pay it if I didn't have to? And I thought, no, I wouldn't pay it. And in the context of Black Text, I have received, and I received because I needed to get to a certain point in my life. And without that support, I wouldn't have got to that point in my life. So I struggle with the definition, and I think it's because it's my personal context that makes it a challenging topic to give that title. And I'm still thinking in my head what I would call it. And what I say to myself is, when you help someone cross the river, is that black tax. Like you help them cross the river, and you don't have to deal with them ever because they are across. Anyway.
And okay, Fadzi, as you're listening to these responses, guys, please do comment in the chat because we want to incorporate it all. Molly, what's your thoughts?
Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks, Fadzi, for that impassioned perspective. I'll begin by saying we all have been recipients at one point or another, but I'm actually going to take it a little bit of a step back because that's kind of what I do. I'm going to go back to the 1800s, right? So at the very early stages of what we kind of knew as the colonial period, one of the things that was instituted by the whites when they were starting to somehow wanting to take more control of how wealth was distributed was this thing called the Hart tax. Prior to that, there already was a very indigenous and sophisticated but well-functioning tax, which is through the aspects of what we call Hunu or Ubuntu, where, let's say someone passed away in a village, everyone would bring, a little bit of some produce to help them out because they know that they'll be not be able to work for a while, and therefore they would actually support them. But then the Hart tax was actually to say every household, every hut, right, every village family unit now had to actually produce and bring something to the authorities. That really just began a process of almost like removing the power from the village system, from how they actually were able to utilize and support each other and help each other out without necessarily feeling like it's a tax. The concept of black tax to me, like I'll just take the two words separately. Black is a celebration, right? So in anything that we think about when we say black, something is black, the connotation tends to want to be looked at as a bad thing, but we can also turn that around and say, what is the power in that, right? Being able to utilize an opportunity to figure out how you can support others. But instead of using the word support, I really want to introduce ideas here with some words. So I'm going to be using the word invest, right? So it's an investment, perhaps into the education of someone in their future. When, we say when you educate a woman, you educate a village, that sort of thing. So I really want to shift us from thinking about the concept of supporting and really thinking of it more as investment. There are 3 books that I put out there in the chat, and maybe Farai, you can share them with others if they've joined now. The 4th one that I hadn't added is the Waterhole Millionaire by the remarkable Gabriel S. Shumba, who is actually Zimbabwean as well, and shares a lot of his expertise from having managed wealth, and he still does, here in the US, but actually globally now with a lot of the work that he's doing. And a lot of what that book talks about is this concept of coming together in community and figuring out how, when you bring the wealth together, you actually have more power to do more compared to just doing something as a one-off. I love Rodney's example of his grandmother. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to tackle that a little bit and speak about what my lived experience has been and why it is that I actually founded the Macheke Sustainability Project. I'll end there for now.
Lovely. Rodney, did you want to add anything to what black tax means to you, or because I know you've already touched upon it?
I can add, yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
So, yeah, I mean, I seldom think about things like black tax, but when I do, some things come to mind. So when you're looking at an issue, the way the issue is framed influences how you look at it. And black tax is cast as a problem. There's just a negative aspect to it. And so when something is a problem, or is viewed as a problem, then there are a whole host of questions come up. What's the most charitable way of looking at it, or least charitable way? Are there alternative ways of looking at the problem? When it's a problem, it means there's a standard that we're using, there's a yardstick. based upon which we're saying, hey, when you deviate from this, then you have a problem. And now, and can I explain? So in my case, if I find that I can't explain the problem in a way that my grandmother can understand, it might be that it's getting to the question of who I am, and I might be drifting from that. So what I'm trying to say is, are we using a Eurocentric approach that makes this thing a problem? So if I compare myself to my neighbor, and I say, well, gee, I need to send this money to do, help somebody like, this way by, pay for school fees and all. And they don't have to do that for their nieces and nephews, but I have to. Now, if I compare myself to my cousins so let's look at my grandmother. She lives with my cousins, and now because she's over 100, she's now, she has a whole host of medical issues. Doesn't have a host of medical issues. She's cognitive decline and is continent, right? So compared to my cousin, he has to shoulder that burden. He has to, make sure that she's well taken care of, and somebody has to, they're working very closely with her. So now, who is shouldering a bigger burden here? So when I compare myself to him, I'm certainly not being taxed, or I'm certainly not being taxed any more than my cousin is. So in that sense, it isn't a problem. So it comes down to, who am I really comparing myself against? And so this is what.
Yeah. So context is everything, right? I'm so with you there, Rodney, because context is everything. Sorry, did I jump in?
No. Yes.
Context is everything, because it allows us to really have the bigger picture. I saw someone in the chat there talking about accountability and being able to plan better. Certainly those are important things. But one of the things that I have been really more morphing into now that I am mostly on the side where I am supporting others and investing in others, investing in education and that sort of thing. It really has been this concept where I'm asking, is there a victim here? Is there a villain here? And is there a hero? All of those aspects are actually rooted in fear, right? So being a hero is not something that we should be aiming for, because I'm not here to save anyone per se. I'm here to better and deeply connect with others. While we walk each other home, we're actually being able to lift each other up, right? But at the same time, one of the things I tell folks when they're on the receiving end is, it is a celebration to have the courage to ask. However, you cannot be somehow placing yourself in victimhood, because then that actually depletes your dignity. And so in order for us to be able to support one another, invest in each other's lives, we're recognizing that there is no victim here. No one is going to save anyone per se, but we are recognizing that the more that we are holding each other accountable. So in the 4 agreements, one of the agreements that they talk about is being forthcoming with your words, right? So really being so impeccable with clarity about what it is that is happening. When someone asks, what does that do to me, right? Does that place me in some hero complex? If so, I need to bring myself back and realizing that this is really just an opportunity, right? It's really just an opportunity to connect better with someone by asking the right questions, not committing to more than I can do, particularly if I'm already saying I will be one of the people in my generation that actually contributes to cultivating generational wealth. And the generational wealth goes beyond just this generation that we want to support. It actually goes, maybe 2 generations down. I'll stop there so I let others chime in.
So Mal, I do think you can save people. You can literally save people from death just because of the way it works. I think the issue we have is that we have a narrow perspective. We're just looking at the tax aspect. But if you look at the full package, incomes, or what our obligations are, and even benefits that we get from who we are, times when you can serve, I remember, because we work with an extended family system, I remember just one day, calling, I guess in English is my grand aunt, but she's really my mbuya, It sounds distant when I explained it even in Shona. I just called her and just to check on her and realized, she was very unwell. And turns out, this was end of last year, where there was a lot of, a lot of people starving, and she was starving to death. And all she needed really was just a little bit to get her to cross the river, as Fati said. And now, if I just look at it and say, oh, look, I sent her $50. It wasn't that much money. It's a small thing. You could look at it as a tax, but it's really going, it does go a very long way when you do help people out in Zimbabwe. And what do you get out of it, right? Because it's not just a one-way street. I think it does something good to us when you are part of a network and you are helping others. It really helps you with your mental well-being. So we do benefit from it, and far from it, just ability. There are a lot of people in the diaspora who have parents come over to take care of their, of their kids. Now, nobody complains when it's like that. It's like, oh, now I'm paying this. No. So you don't look at it as but it's part of it.
Yeah. Well, so Rodney, I'm sorry to cut you there, but I want us to, I think what I'm getting from this, right, is that we all think it's an investment. It's sometimes some people are using it's necessary to help somebody cross the river. I think in general, of what I'm getting even from the chat here, there's this sense of there's something that we need to do. Now, I think what people struggle with is when you have $100, how do you actually manage allocating the emergencies that come? There's different kind of requests. Like, how do you manage that whether it's investment, support, whatever you want to call it, how do you do that? And to get us started, I think because we have some folks here who are students, and I know some students who are in university here in the US, so they have a job where they work 20 hours a week. And so what I often hear is now my $100 paycheck, how much that is, I have to take care of the family. Like, can you guys talk about if when you started your investment supporting, when did you start? What was the role that you took? And then we could progress to how has that changed over time? What were your lessons? Because there's some real things here. So let's just start with 10, 20 years ago when you started. How did you actually start?
So like I said in the beginning, I'm like one of the younger siblings in my family. So my sisters think I am a little naive to think that you only give help when it's needed, not when it's wanted. Okay. So whenever someone says, I have to help my family, I'm like, no, you don't. You have to help them, because if you don't, what will happen? A lot of the people in the diaspora are not leaving. They're enabling other people to live better lives than they do because they feel like they have to help. So the first thing you should ask yourself is, do I want to do this? If it's a no, then you can decide, do I want to ask myself the next question? Do I want to help? It can be a yes and a no. Do I have to help? Okay. And to help you answer those two questions is, if I don't help, what happens? Okay. If you're a student and you lived in this country for 18 years, your family is not going to die because you didn't send 20 bucks. You're better off saving that money to go for an interview, to buy a suit, to be presentable in an interview, because you're better off helping in the future with substantial resources than sending your paycheck to Zim. Okay. A lot of people think if I help today, if I take my money today and help, you are compromising the future by helping with little bits of money today. That's a conversation I'm very passionate about. I will tell students you're better off having an internship at Facebook in the summer than working on campus just to send $200 home. So sometimes it's about, like, what happens if I don't do it? No one will die because you didn't send $20. And that's the reality of the money that's coming from the diaspora. It's drip feeding for people to buy food. And what household cannot live off of sadza and maveji? So we need to start thinking about what actually are you helping with? Because we also like to say, oh, you know, I'm paying all this black tax, I'm paying for my family this. If you're sending money for food, you're wasting potential investment in the future. I can talk about this because I'm really passionate, and I just feel like, why are you spending so much time Western Unioning $20 and like the charges cost so much? And what, like, how is that going to change a household?
Can I chime in?
Yes, go ahead.
But
This
Rodney,
is very hard. I love this.
yeah, Rodney, I'll give you an opportunity. You look like you wanted to say something quick, and then I can go after you. But I have 2 points I want to add here.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, very good. So sometimes, yes, you can save someone, right? So someone may die, right? Sometimes. This is the reality of the life that we are living in within these generations. That is the truth, right? And being able to acknowledge that is important. I think what I am talking about is not so much the activity that occurs when the emergent situation approaches. What I'm trying to encourage here is conversations that are very forthcoming and authentic prior to anything really major occurring. Being able to be in an understanding as to is the support that we are wanting to give each other here, because it's two ways, like Rodney mentioned. Sometimes we want our parents to come here and help us, raise our children. Sometimes they need support to help out with, the broader family. It's never really for one person, right? We are raised within the Huno system, so it's truly a communitarian spirit. But if we are not acknowledging the difficulties that we live in as either first generation or folks that are in slightly more advanced communities and economies versus those that are remaining back at home and in other places, we miss this opportunity to actually remove ourselves from making decisions from a place of fear, right? You make a decision from a place of fear because you're worried that someone's going to die, or someone is not going to talk to me anymore. I'm now going to separate myself from the family. But really being courageous enough early on, and this is where the mindset comes in, to say, I do recognize that I do not come from wealth. And even for those that did come from wealth, I have a number of mentees, that I've worked with in the last, couple of years, that did come from a certain amount of wealth in Zimbabwe, but now that wealth is depleted. So the circumstances have changed surrounding, can they still get support from home, or should they now actually be working extra to be able to support? Being able to have authentic conversations with our loved ones is important, because when that urgent situation occurs, by then either you've already invested in something that they're already working to make themselves understand what it means to live within their means, right? But also you also have had enough to be able to save so that you can support during urgent times. Nowadays they have some insurances that you can, buy into, but that's not for everybody. Everyone can't even afford to have a health insurance plan that can support them. So having the conversations outside of the urgent situation, I think is going to really be useful, because at that point, everyone is quite rational and there isn't too much judgment. It's more about, I'm in school right now, these are the plans. And really, when thinking about generational wealth, I am actually doing this more for moving our family name forward beyond this generation. I hope that lands somehow.
Well, Molly, you raised some very good points about conversations, which I'm curious actually to hear how many people in this group of, on the Zoom, we have 46 people. How many actually have conversations about money with their family, like real conversations? I don't know what the answer is. That's one. And two, I think what I'm also picking up is there's different types of supporting. There's, I think what I'm hearing from all of you is something around categorizing, prioritizing. But how do you, someone posed the question, what you may think is not a priority could be somebody else's priority who's on the receiving end. And often the challenge is, how do you say no?
Yeah. Great question.
So,
Rodney, why don't you go?
Yeah. So this is a very complicated topic. So as with complicated topics, there are different ways of looking at it, and nuance matters. It's certainly the case that there are some cases where nobody's going to die, and you could actually be enabling some terrible behaviors by sending this support. And then there are cases where, no, you are risking a particular situation. So now, for me, the question really becomes, what can I live with? Right? You look at the situation and say, can I live with this thing 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? Or if I get a chance to reflect before I die, will I be okay with this thing? And that changes. So what are you shooting for? It's not easy to really just come up with simple rules and say, okay, do this thing and it's gonna work. Because the details of the context matter, and they matter significantly. So I would say, in short, do what you can live with. And the cases where you do have to draw the line, it may be a conversation, but in a lot of cases, the conversations don't help. It's the action that you take. You draw the line somewhere and you stick to it. That speaks more. That speaks a lot more than just the conversation. The conversation, it does help if you can, sit down with people and explain to them. But in a lot of cases, things tend to be very emotional, and I think, well, maybe you're trying to get away from responsibilities and all that stuff. So having that authentic dialogue tends to be difficult. If it's a case where, again, somebody thinks something is a priority, but I don't think it's a priority, well, it's up to them to explain why it should be a priority for me. If they can't, then that's not my fault. We have to live with that.
Okay, so I want us to start moving into real practical, like what you do, like real.
Okay.
Like, I think we're sort of right now floating in a very philosophical conversation, and I think we need to get to like the actual. What do you do on a monthly basis or annual, whatever it is you want to hear? Chipo also says, she likes the idea of talking to families about what they can afford. Teach actually has conversations with his family, and he asks his family to prepare a budget and have conversations about line by line items on that budget. People have different approaches, but let me ask this question. If you're open to sharing, what percentage of your income goes to investing, supporting, whatever word you want to use, your family?
Yeah. Sorry for my beeping again. And this is like, conversations about money should not be difficult. It's either you have the money or you don't. Okay. And a lot of you feel bad about not doing something because you have the money and you're deciding what to do with the money. Okay. So when you do your personal budget, you have to have your absolute must-haves taken care of. Okay. So what is it that will make Rue be a happy person and a thriving adult before you support your family? Your family cannot depend on you if your mental health is not okay. Okay. So if that means going out in New York City every week to party until 4 a.m. and you need that for your sanity, then you have to do that. Because a lot of people, I see it with students and a lot of people in the diaspora, like, you give more than you have. And I don't think you should feel bad about your family not having the same things that you have. Maybe you're lucky in life, maybe things just happen for you, but I think at some point you have to accept that you will never make people happy. You will never bring them to the same level. So think about the one most important thing that will change someone's life. It's not food, guys. People send money for groceries every month. That does not change the life of someone who's not in school. Okay.
Yeah.
I always say there are certain places in life where we help people cross over. Like your relative who needs to get an internship in Harare and they are Mberengwa, they don't have a place to stay. You can rent for that person in Harare for the year because they need that crossover. Okay. But you can't send someone shoes and the things, because I speak from someone who's on the other side of the Atlantic and seeing some of the things that come in bags, Zim, I'm like, those shoes for what? Like, seriously, like, why did you spend so much money paying duty to bring shoes? We are fine without those. I shouldn't say this. but
I was going to call you out. You were saying that. I was going to say that.
I need shoes cheaper.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the reality is you have to think bigger when you're helping your family. So does it, if you're working on Wall Street, just to, pick on some people, and you can afford $5,000 at the end of the year, what does that do to transform your family? Okay, so it's not just a monthly budget, it's a long-term transformational budget. So we've been struggling with our house. It needs a new paint job, or my parents' house needs a new floor. Those are some of the things that you can think about. Or I have two siblings who need to get to this next stage. A lot of us are stuck with black text because it's something we see as a continuous burden, like a monthly thing. Do something so that people don't need you in their lives.
Yeah.
The more that you start thinking about, I need to do this, just you need to do things so that you become dispensable. We cannot, as Black people, behave like donors who want to be in our lives forever. And I say this as someone who's worked in an NGO space, where if you run out of poor people, you run out of a job. You need to invest in your family so they don't need you. That's the real generational wealth creation, where in the next 10 years, you're not the only rich person in your family who is complaining about black tax.
Yeah. Can I?
Okay.
And Molly, before you respond, if you can consider this as well, aligned with what Fadzi has just said, Munashe is asking, what role does culture play in any of this, especially for the younger ones? Because I think right now, there's a chance that for some of us, we're a little older, you have, you've experienced a lot more. So for somebody who's younger and, you just came out, how do you manage all of that?
Yeah. So what I would suggest for you, Munashe, is get a mentor, right? So I wish I had a Molly in my life when I was, just coming out of college or actually entering college, because that would have totally, shifted my mindset earlier on. Being able to rise into that confidence and courage to be able to have the conversations, but also really set the right boundaries that allow you to have a dignified relationship with your family is something that actually takes, a little bit of mentoring and coaching. So I would say, find one. And the next thing that I would add to what Fadi was saying is, when you think about the numbers, they are staggering, right? I think Zimbabweans in the diaspora across the world send about $1 billion, of remittances to Zimbabwe. Now, imagine if this was going in a one fund and really just helping to develop the country, create jobs, come up with better technologies and that sort of thing. But because we do these things as one-offs, it's really becoming difficult for us to make the bigger change, because when you ask the question, I've been sending money for the last 20 years. Has that actually helped to move my family from a place of need to a place of sustainability? And for the most part, you're just realizing that they're not thriving, they're just sustaining because of what you send every month. That's not what we want, right? We want to really encourage this investment idea to help us to be able to say, well, maybe this month I'm not sending just money by myself. Let's figure out if 5 of us in our neighborhood actually come together and start creating a project, perhaps maybe that's actually what can help the neighborhood to actually thrive. Maybe we have a neighborhood garden, maybe we do, all of these other creative ideas that allow us to help in a way that's helps people to be less in need. The reason why I'm very big on actually helping people to feel empowered in their own position is because once people realize that they are living within their means, they probably will never not be as wealthy as someone who is living elsewhere, and that's okay. And they actually having the same aspirations as anybody, right? They have enough liberty in their lives to have as much aspiration. So if it's not for them, perhaps for their children, you see that the conversation starts to shift, right? So now we start talking about, oh yeah, educating, my child who needs more tutoring, my child who needs this. And then our job from this end is really trying to figure out where are the resources, right? You can easily quite send a message to someone who is a classmate who is doing quite well in the city, and they'll be able to tell you, oh yeah, there's a WhatsApp tutoring program to actually help your niece who is somewhere in the rural community. So being resourceful, but also very creative about this in such a way in that we realize it's not always a solution of money per se, but it's also a solution of being creative enough and allowing those that are in need to start participating in their own solution, right? And feeling like they're at the front and leading edge of what it is, what they want their life to be. Their life should not be what we want it to be for them. It really should be about what they want it to be for themselves. And it's okay for us to maybe offer some mentoring and some guidance so that they can actually have some ideas. Oh, maybe let me do this to my farm so that it can actually produce more and I can increase the capacity and those sort of things. But sometimes you learn that when people are not settled in their own spirit, just about their own life, then there's always going to be this scarcity mentality where they feel like there's never enough. And whether we are here in the US or elsewhere in the world, I think it's important for us to challenge each other to actually say, am I giving from a place of fear? Or have I actually really realized, like Rodney is saying, that I can live with the fact that this person may actually not go into college, for example, and now they are actually going to go into trade school, and now they're going to do something else. There are many ways in which we can make very meaningful decisions that also keep us moving along in our personal agendas for finance and wealth.
Yeah.
So Rodney, I see you want to say something. I'm just going to highlight in terms of Chipo did some research, and she says that the interesting thing about Zim and remittances is that a lot of it goes into healthcare and education, which I actually didn't know. I wouldn't have thought that that's what it's going into. But Rodney, go ahead. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree. I was going to say that I agree with a lot of what has been said, because there are certainly situations where that applies. But first, to answer the question that you asked directly, we do have a budget, like a monthly budget. Since I'm an accountant, we budget all the stuff, and that's fine. So we do have an allocation to help, and this may be different compared to people that are just starting out in college. Because when you're young, you probably have siblings that are going through school, and so you may be in a position to help them elsewhere, but also and cross that bridge. In my case, my siblings are older, so I don't really have to send them to school. However, one of my brothers passed away, so then we have his kids, so we help them with their school fees. Now, again, going back to what Fazi said, it's not appropriate in a lot of cases to just take your Western standards and try to apply them to somebody in Zim. So I get some requests, okay, the kid needs this thing, they need data. I'm like, no, I'm not paying for data. We have to discuss this thing. We have to find a way. If you were at boarding school, how do you deal with this issue? So there are things that, again, I'm okay with paying the tuition and buying books and all that, but I'm not doing this. I'm not buying a phone. I'm not paying for data on the that unless you come to me and explain to me why this is a necessity, and you're not just going beyond. Because there is, again, the tragedy of this is it can be abused. You can have people taking advantage of the situation. You're not there, and they come up with all sorts of stories, and they do crazy things. So in my case, we don't just send the money, we also ask for receipts. Unless it's groceries, I want to see the receipts. You tell me you want to see the, there's a medical issue, you need no, I need to see the receipts, and I need to see the letter from the doctor. Otherwise, you get all sorts of requests, and I've heard of situations where people are sending money and then somebody's using the money and they're even having affairs, or they're doing, crazy stuff happens. So you can't, I mean, you are thinking, oh, I'm doing such a good job, I'm supporting my family, yet people are abusing that. But at the same time, there is need. That there's a gap that needs to be met. I do agree with Fadzi on groceries. I think I look at my parents, they're elderly, and they don't really have a means of they can't earn that. I mean, they could, but do I really want my parents to have to scrounge around, for food? And like, there's just some things, again, when I look at the cost and given where I am, I'm like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna pay for that. And
Rodney, I'm gonna catch you right there, because you said where you are.
Yes.
Yes.
And
yes.
Given where you are, you don't want your parents to. So how about someone, your younger self,
Yes.
20 years ago?
Yeah.
So that's why I said it comes on to do what you can live with. So again, you have to look at the need and say, is this thing that's critical that needs to be met? If I can't send it, does it make a difference? Again, if it's a case where somebody needs to wear, somebody ends up wearing fancier shoes, then no, it doesn't make a difference. But there are cases where you are helping. So my younger self, I think I was certainly a lot stricter, and I couldn't afford that much. So again, you only send, people would only ask for things that were critical, but I guess my siblings would ask.
No, but Rodney, I'm terrible. Sorry, yes. You finish. Because I really want, I think what Ru is doing right here is really to focus on the audience of the folks that are younger, because they're the ones that really struggle the most with this, right? So if we're going to do what you can live with, there are nuances to that, right? So one is the technical. Do I have the money? Okay, I'll send it, right? The other is this cultural bit, right? Where you are kind of questioning yourself, can I say no to my parents? Being raised with Hunu and, wanting to somehow be seen in a certain way. I frame that as just have boundaries, right? As long as those boundaries are clear, then I think we even train our loved ones to know what to ask for, so that someone is not coming to us for data when they already know that the rules surrounding how we are helping each other here is not for luxury items, right? And someone else to say, no, but data is not a luxury. Well, to you, it may not be a luxury. Now you make that case, like Rodney had mentioned earlier. But Fadzi, you're right on point, and I think you're really the most important aspect of this conversation, because you are on the receiving end. While I've been on the receiving end when I was getting scholarships here in the US, I have received a lot of aid from well-wishers here in the US. So I know what it's like being on the other side. But one thing I was very clear about is that I was not a victim. I'm not being helped because I'm poor. I'm being helped because I have potential. And the more that we are actually encouraging our family members to rise to that standard, to recognize that, go ahead, sorry.
What if you try and they don't want?
So I think that's where the boundaries come in. Go ahead, Fadzi. You can answer this better than me.
You say it's like dating, okay? If you say no to someone twice, 3 times, and they don't get it, it's not on you. They are daft or they are stalking you, okay? which is bad. So I had this conversation with a friend who's part of this conversation today, and I was saying the mistake we make is not letting our families know that we have priorities. Okay, like I will tell you, I don't spend money. There's certain things I don't spend money on because I just don't find value for those things in my life. For some people, some people would like to turn up looking sharp, hair done, everything. I'm not paying for a child's school fees. If I can calculate that your hair costs more than 15 bucks a month, no, I am not doing that. Okay. Because you can afford something you've just chosen. You have consciously chosen to do something with your money. And then we go back to the question of, do you have to tell Gogo of another Gogo your budget? No, you don't. Why do we feel that people are entitled to our lives if they are not like immediate family? I remember my mom asking me, what do you do with your money? I was like, yeah, do you want to see my college loans? So I sat with my mom. I showed him my college loans. I said, this is how much I have to pay back every month, which I wasn't doing at the time because I didn't have enough money. But she thought I was splashing money because I bought a coffee once a month. And I had to explain to her that this coffee in the grand scheme of things is for my sanity. I need it. So for the younger people and even the older people in this room, you do not have an obligation, guys. We complain so much because we're doing a lot of things we don't want to do. Rodney wants to take care of his parents. There is no tax in there. It's a pleasure to give Mama Mari. It's like, there's happiness. When you start questioning happiness about giving, stop it.
Correct. Correct. And thank you, because that's exactly where the line is drawn. I'm talking about as boundaries, and for this just going straight to the chase and saying stop it. So I think what's also important to what you said is how I actually do it in my personal life. I typically don't invest in someone who is not willing to invest in their own life. So if you're coming to me and just saying you need $50 for education, you have to tell me that you've been walking around and selling whatever you can sell, doing whatever you can, and you've raised $5 towards your own education. So the more that we're actually holding people accountable to these better lives, and Rodney here, I'm not talking about mom and dad, because I take care of my mom. She has no need for anything. It is a pleasure. As a matter of fact, she's living with me now, and I've told her this is the life you want. You get it, and to the most. But to my siblings, to my cousins, to the rest of the village that I come from, right? Because I'm someone who is, very generous and kind. I'm generous, kind, and firm, right? And I will hold you accountable to ensuring that you are also living up to the life you want to live. Through my research when I was doing my PhD, one of the things I recognized is no one actually defined themselves as poor. Everyone actually said, no, but if I look at myself as poor, then somehow I'm saying God, didn't bless me. I have so many things and I have all of these things. So really, when we think about the lives of the poor as them not having aspirations just as ours, we're actually missing the point. We actually have to recognize that sometimes it is okay for us to have the difficult conversation, but I think it's so much easier to have it outside of an emergency where you're now having to make a choice between life and death. And recognize that sometimes when the calls are coming in and the WhatsApps are coming in from Zimbabwe, they always sound like an emergency. So you have to now navigate that and start setting standards, what is urgent and what is not. That's my piece there.
So there is nothing new about people.
Rodney, before you go on, guys, so we had scheduled this for an hour and I want to be respectful. So this is a really great conversation. So I want us all, if you can stay. We're going to keep having this conversation maybe for another half hour. At some point, there's been a couple of requests that have come in. I am going to do something we haven't done before, but I'm going to trust that we're all going to be respectful in this room, and we're going to open it up so we can actually all converse, and we'll have people raise their hands and talk. But let's spend the next 5-10 minutes sort of closing it up with the panelists, and then after that, we'll all have a very, very open discussion that I think will be to cover up anything else that we, could have been missed and that people want to express. Over to you, Samanzanga.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's nothing new really in people being unable to help. Like you can be in a situation where you just are not able to help. So at times the disconnect happens because either the lifestyle that you're showing or the things that you're saying, or just the thinking that you're in the US or outside Zim, then you should be able to help because things are easy for you. To those that merit an explanation, I've never had to do this really for the most part because I tend to give when I can. So when I tell you I can't, it means I can't. But there's a time when you need to show people that, look, maybe you have expenses, there are things that you have to deal with, but I draw the line there also. I'm not going to explain to all sorts of people. Some people just say that I can't help, and usually people understand. Again, if I can live with them, that's fine. Look at the situation and say, no, I can't, I can deal with this. The one thing where even when I try to help, I draw the line is with investments. People come to you, they tell you all sorts of stories. I need to do this and that.
Talk about investments, yes.
Yeah, it's not their money. They really don't try to do much. Having said that, there are cases where somebody says, comes to me and they're like, "Ndoda marry a bear," or whatever, But because it's not that much money, and I can send you $200. Okay, fine, I can do that. But once you start to talk about substantial sums of money, no, I'm not doing it. And we're going to have to. You may not like the response, but that's not my problem.
But I think Rodney, and you and I. Yeah. This is through real friendship here. Yeah. I feel like when we say it's just $200, I think we're continuing to perpetuate this mismatch of understanding the value of the US dollar. So my perspective sometimes is, even if it's not that much to me and I could quickly do it on World Remit, I think it's important for us to have the conversation still. It doesn't seem like it's a lot to me, but we want to understand how people can understand how that dollar is earned by somebody working elsewhere. But I'll give you, Ru, an opportunity because I think we have a lot of questions on the chat there that need to be addressed. But I just feel like, being able to get back to me not saying, oh, it's just $10 has really been helpful for me, because I have to recognize every dollar counts, and how I earn that dollar is actually something that we should be paying attention to.
Oh, certainly you do. But at times, I think you can't explain some of these things to people.
Yeah.
I'm just not able to help. Yeah. I'm not going to help. Yeah. Again, it comes down to the relationship. So there's some like, you're close to me, I'm a sibling, and you're crying about. But again, if I can't do that, if I don't have that money, I'm not going to feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which should be pretty much every college student in the audience. We should actually be prioritizing educating ourselves and ensuring that we have the mental health that Swazi talked about, and then deciding what else can I do. But I think learning from early on, and I think having mentors is really going to be useful for you, because then you really can start understanding the nuances. What you are going through now, we went through a while ago, but I think when we went through it, there wasn't that much social media. There wasn't a lot of everyone having access to just about anybody. So things were a little bit different. And I think the aspect of how people were asking for support was also quite different. So we should put that in context. Should we address Rebecca's question there?
Oh, I didn't see. Yes, please read it.
Yeah, so she's asking if I can talk about giving not only to the family and but rather to the community and to the country as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened to me early on was that I realized that I do come from a slightly large family, and I realized that the requests were coming in more than I could even respond, right? And I started asking the bigger question: what is it that's actually happening that within my family, but also the surrounding, neighborhood, that could actually be solved by a systemic and well-planned, accounted, program that could allow people to start figuring out how they can actually contribute to their own movement away from poverty. And this is where the Macheke Sustainability came to be, because I was thinking about, if I help my family members, they are actually doing well. Now they need to actually hire people that can protect their wealth, right? Because everyone else in the community is somehow staying behind and maybe becoming even, having less access to resources. But also what was very important to me is, what is the neighborhood looking like, right? Are we continuing to chop down trees? Are we not caring at all about cleaning, having a neighborhood cleanup and all of these things that actually help the community to look beautiful, but also for people to feel happy to say they come from a certain place. And so it's not for everybody to create a nonprofit organization. It's a lot of work, right? It's literally a full-time job on its own. But also, the way that I advise people all the time is really to start thinking about this systematically. Instead of thinking of just the one brother who needs support, think of it as maybe a collection of brothers, right? Coming together and then really having a conversation about, if we put this amount of money together, what is it that we can actually do? There was a comment in the chat there about projects that never go anywhere. Well, this seems to be the case because the economic system in Zimbabwe has been it has baffled even economists, right? People with PhDs in economics struggle to really understand the true direction in which this economic system is going. So that sort of makes sense to some extent. But I think when we are investing in projects, we almost have to think of ourselves as project managers. This is not something where you're just putting your money in hoping that everything goes well. It does take time. And this is where I can really speak to my own experience, as really to be able to be a part of helping a community develop, or your family to develop. I'm talking about developing from poverty. A lot of it has to start with the mindset. What is it that they think of themselves as far as poverty is concerned? What are their aspirations? How can they support themselves in that? How do they get more creative in starting to look at the opportunities that are out there? When I came, I didn't know that USAP existed or Education USA existed. Maybe they were not there at the time, but I was so interested in understanding who can be my allies, where can I get information, because it's not always about wanting to get money. It's also about getting the information that empowers us to then be able to do the next thing. I hope I answered that to satisfaction, Rebecca.
Thanks, Molly. We're going to open it up now to everybody. And guys, I'm really trusting that we can do this in a very respectful way. So show your cameras, show your faces. If you do want to say something, please raise your hand. I will call on you to speak. And while we're transitioning to that, there was a question before around mental health, which it's been touched upon. Have you guys on the panel experienced, or what has been the mental health impact of managing, whether it's support, investment, obligation, whatever you want to call it, and how have you managed that? And Molly, I know you started talking about having mentors, but if there are other views of that would be great to hear.
So yeah, I'm passionate about self-care, and you have to guard it selfishly. And we don't do that as much as a community. I talk to students who are, like a student who says, I had to take on 2 extra hours so I could send money home. And I'm thinking, in the long run, what does that do to, to your OPT, to all these other things that you're foregoing in the now to, to take care of the now. So again, a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't have to, unless you want to, and you can, like Rodney says, I want to take care of my parents and I can afford it. So those 2 things are the most important things. Can you afford it? Do you want to do it? Guys, there are lots of kids who neglected their parents and their parents are fine. This burden you're putting on yourself, you are choosing, you're doing it for yourself. Let's not pretend that Zim needs this kind of help. We do it because we need to. So a part of like giving is about motivation. Okay, and I will talk a little bit about t-shirt diplomacy. You know, you come from America and everyone has, oh, I was in New York City and I bring you this t-shirt. It's fine for that day, okay? The t-shirt diplomacy, everyone is happy, they say it. But what has that done to you? You're happy because you gave, but the reality is if you're unhappy about your giving, don't do it. That's my first thing. So I have asked friends on this platform for help. And I would tell people, if you do not want to help me, don't do it, because you're going to be bitter. You're going to dislike me. And it's not good for this world when people who help are unhappy about the helping. That's when the text comes into this conversation. Let giving be pleasurable.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
a bad example, Fadzi, because I get a kick out of helping. So, for example, we drilled a borehole at home, and I'm like, you know, I haven't done anything for the village. Why not give the villagers water? It's, you know, it costs a little extra, but I get a kick out of it. I don't think it's not a burden, it's not an obligation, but it helps my mental well-being. You know, you get a sense of purpose out of it. So it comes down to who are you, and again, how your mental health, what improves it, what works against it, and.
But Rodney, and I know there are people that want to speak on the chat, so we'll give you that time. Rodney, I love that example so much. You're so good at giving practical examples. I tend to go more into the philosophical and, you know, lecture mode. But that example of the borehole is precisely what I was talking about, right? Now, all of a sudden, the neighbor that didn't have access to water for her garden, guess what? She's no longer living in that level of poverty, because now they have access to clean water, but also to be able to water their garden. Now they have food. We begin to actually reduce by, you know, this dependency that can sometimes be unhealthy if we are actually making real concerted efforts to assess what can actually be useful and what is truly an investment. Bravo to your water, you know, example there.
Love it, love it. Let's open it up. If you raise your hand, I'll call on you. If you're going to speak, you need to show your face. Those are the rules. If you don't want to show your face, don't say anything. Chipo, you're up. You're first.
Hey, and I'm breaking the rule because I have a baby.
Oh, okay, fine. I know. Okay.
I can't show my face. She's doing a lot of things.
Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. I think this is really helpful. I was going to say the other thing with Black Tax is that for the young people, this is not for the elders because they know more than I do, but for the young people, I think you want to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success as well. So this is something I think a lot about with students. And I think I gave an example in the chat. OPT is now $400. It was only $60 or so when we were undergrads. I think it's now $400. And when you graduate, you have to pay your first and last month rent. And the last time I did this with students, I think it was coming up to $1,800 or something like that. So as you consider how to help your family, also remember that you have to think about yourself in 4 years, because usually there won't be anybody else to ask for help. It'll just be you. So I think when you frame it like that, it helps you. And also like what Fadzi said about being bitter, I would say, I don't want you to be heartbroken, right? I think when I started my blog, it came from a place of being really heartbroken that the people that I had been supporting, it didn't feel like they supported me. And there was a time when nobody else could support me. So then I ended up doing something really drastic, like buying tickets for 20 days in France. And that wasn't a financial decision that I would have made, but it came from a place of being really, really heartbroken. So we hope that you won't be heartbroken. And we hope that when you graduate, you will be taken care of, because that's the most important thing. We don't want you to end up losing your visa because you couldn't pay for OPT. And I say this because this has happened more times than I wish to think about, that people actually went out of status because they couldn't afford to pay for OPT.
Yeah, I like that. It is so important. Dr. Darlington Sabasi, let's. You had your hand next.
Yeah, thank you. And like Chipo, I'm going to apologize. I cannot be on camera because of the baby in the room. We're trying to protect the baby, so no camera or social media for the baby. So again, thank you very much for organizing the session. I think it's been very informative. One main point I really just wanted to clarify and make very clear. I think I'm going to disagree slightly with some of the panelists in the sense that I think I don't like the word black tax, but because that's what we're going with, I'll just keep that. But I think it is an obligation that we have black tax. I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's something we have to do. And the way I always explain to people is a lot of us who are outside, we graduated from college, undergrad, some masters, some PhD with 0 college loans. We graduated without a burden of having to pay the college loans, those interest rates that takes some people out here their entire life to be able to pay back. And I think just thinking of that, that gives us that obligation that there were sacrifices that were made by some people that enabled us to be able to graduate without that requirement or that obligation to pay those high interest rates and those higher loans back. So I think just from that perspective, we have an obligation, whether it's an obligation to give to your family, whether it's an obligation to give to your community, to your country. I think that's a decision that you're going to have to make. But I think we do have an obligation to do something, and we just have to be intentional when we decide to do whatever it is that we're doing. Now, just quickly, for those who are in college, and again, coming back to the issue of paying student loans, those who are in college, generally, they're not required to pay student loans until after they've graduated and they have a job. So I think, to me, that's one word of advice that I would put out there for those kids who are in college, that you're still in college, take care of yourself first, but always keep that in mind that by the time you graduate, you have an obligation to pay back to your family, to your community, or to your country. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's a different perspective, right? So for someone like me, I didn't have that. So I had to work through college, get some scholarships here and there, get some support here and there. So I actually didn't have an opportunity to have my family from back home supporting me through that. But that is a really good example for those that are actually being supported. Look at it that way, as paying back into that. An obligation can also be a celebration, right? It can also be an opportunity to say, at least I have an opportunity to be able to connect more deeply with my community and with my family. And therefore, it's something that we should be able to do with this sense of happiness and ease, as long as we are thinking about it and framing it in a way that actually supports us to have, a balanced mental health, but also truly having more authentic and wonderful family relationships. Because when we do visit home, we want to be able to go back home, right? Home will always be home to some extent. And that's something that we can continue to do as we build on those relationships, as long as we are aware that the choices we are making, the decisions we are making, no matter how difficult they may be, let's have the courage to have those conversations, particularly outside of the emergency situations.
Thank you, Molly. Do we have anybody else? I don't see any more hands. So we can start to close out unless there's anybody else who wants to say something. I really think, actually, I do have one last question, guys. How about loaning money? Oh, Mai Chikonzo, yes, I was waiting for you. Thank you. So we have—
About what? Huh?
I'm jumping around. So I want to ask about loaning money to family, loans. And then, but we also have on the line. When I saw that she joined—
Hi, guys.
I know Mai Chikonzo. I thought it would be good to have a perspective from somebody who's, and she's been on the line listening. It would be good to have a perspective from somebody who's representing our mothers and fathers, just to share a few words from you as well.
This is a good conversation you are having. And honestly,
my situation and most of you is different. We came here 6 years ago when we were older, when all our kids were in college and my husband left the corporate world to answer God's call, and he went to school to a seminary here. So that's why we came, and now he's working as a pastor here. So because we paid for ourselves, we didn't have to bother anyone to say pay for us. We're actually paying for ourselves and for our 2 children. We're still in school. But when we were younger, I think around 2000, we bought our very first property in Zim. And my husband was working for a bank, and for some reason, they didn't want to give us transfer fees, and we didn't have that money. So I ended up going to UK. That's when when people were going to England a lot. So I ended going to England for 6 months, and I just worked to just try and raise that money. But at the end of the day, the bank paid. But my experience then, I got to see a different perspective of diaspora, where people work so hard, people give back home, and I knew families who were really living large. And then when I was in England, seeing how people work back to back sometimes was heartbreaking. So when I went home, I was just busy trying to educate people to a point where my husband just said, you know what, stop, they'll never understand it. And then us being here, we have my mother-in-law in Zim, but she has 5 other kids. We've always been able to take care of her. She is our only obligation in Zim, but of course we've got the extended family. So for me, I give when I want to. If there is a need, I would rather empower you to do something. I am past a stage where I am shy. I talk to people, I say, like my niece sent me a message to say, Tete, kana muneka 50 kasina basa ndikandireyo. And then I laughed. I was like, wow, ka 50 kasina basa, I don't have it. But what is your issue? And then she was like, I'm struggling, A, B, C, D. And then I said, what do you want to do? Tell me, I can help you. She's now selling my bureau. She said, okay, help me get a bureau. And she seems to be doing fine. So this business of just giving people, because people in Zim live large, they live their life, guys. I was home in December, in January. People in Zim, in some areas, like north of Harare, they live large. And then, obviously, if your parents send you to school, if they sacrificed, it's your time to give back, but you should never stop taking care of yourself. We lost our daughter January 9th. She was 31. She was in UAE. And she had no obligation to do anything for us, but I don't know why the last 2 years, she was all about blessing us, doing things for us. On my birthday, my husband's birthday, her siblings. And I remember even last year on my birthday, we were joking and she says, Mama, what do you want for your birthday? I was like, you know, in America, they now have these televisions where you just give commands and they'll do anything. And then she says, oh, really? How much does it cost? And I'm like, oh, anything from 300 to 1,000 or whatever. And then she sent her dad 500. She says, Dad, can you buy Mama the television she wants? And he was like, oh, she was joking. And I was joking. I felt bad. And then she says, Mama, that's what I want to do. And I'm like, no, you need money. It's COVID had just started. We don't know how this thing is going to go. Save money. And she wanted to do it. September, she was diagnosed of cancer. January 9, she died. She died at 31. So I'm glad she lived her life. She went on vacations. She did all she wanted to do in her life. So nothing is guaranteed, guys. Don't say, I will enjoy when I retire and go back to Zimbabwe or retire here. Every day, do you make time for yourself, do things you like. I liked the person who said because of bitterness, she ended up flying to France. Whilst it was impulsive, plan it now. You have the opportunity to plan. small vacations. Even here in America, you can't be in one state and you don't even travel because you're taking care of people back home. Empower them, challenge them to empower them. Yesterday, we buried a Zimbabwean here in Seattle. Very nice man. He was 51, doing lots of projects in Zim. He made a difference in his village. People are doing things because he empowered them. I think a takeaway from me is to empower people, guys. Empower your people, challenge them, give them deadlines to say, okay, my sister, I know you're struggling. I'm going to be giving you what I've been sending every month for the next 5 months, but I'm going to reduce it so that I can help you do something. If you're going to grow vegetables, if you're going to hustle, people in Zim hustle. So let's empower them to hustle rather than give them money. Buy houses, guys. If you have an opportunity to buy a house here, live your life here. You saw the demolitions. I actually have a mom here. She's 65. She's working and building in Marondera. And right now she doesn't know whether they are going to demolish. She has built a beautiful house. So Zim is hard, guys, but make the most where you are. That's all I can say. Sorry for taking long.
No. Thank you, my Chikonzo, for your wise words, and it's good to hear from somebody who represents our mothers as well. Granted, people have different stories and different journeys. I think, again, guys, the purpose of this is just to have the conversation, to hear the different perspectives. At the end of the day, each of us has a choice to make. What we want is for people to make wise choices that are based on having done some research and understanding all the different scenarios that are out there. And I think a lot of people in the conversation today have spoken about, at the end of the day, come up with what works for you. It comes down to your value system. Whatever it is that you want to do, plan for it. I go on vacations, and sometimes, I'm speaking personally, I probably sometimes put the burden on myself to do things. I am blessed, let me put it that way, because maybe my family doesn't need it, but I put the burden on myself to do these extravagant things for my mother because I feel like that's what she needs. Maybe she doesn't actually really need that. But sometimes let's think of, are you putting the burden on yourself because it's necessary or are you just putting a burden on yourself? I heard about conversations and communicating, that we need to communicate. It's not an us versus them situation. These are people that it's our parents, it's our siblings, it's our cousins. We all grew up together. Let's have the conversations. It may be difficult, may feel like I'm not empowered to speak, but try it and see what happens. I've certainly had some conversations. I've not been successful, but I've been challenged to do that today, and I am going to try that. I also heard about empower. So whatever we are spending on, let's think of empowering, so that, Anzi, what was the English word that Fadzi used? Fadzi, what was the English word that you used? Dispensable, Ndiro.
Yes.
Right, you want to empower people so that, and you want to change the trajectory. If we're speaking in the generational wealth context, right? We want to change the trajectory. So sometimes you don't do that just by sending money so that people can buy a nice car, because that is happening as well. Sometimes it is about food for some families, but also the education, the investments which Doreen talked about, which for her, it hasn't necessarily worked all the time, but eventually it will. Yeah, I think that's what I heard. To my panelists, do you guys have, each of you, if there's any parting words that you want to leave with the rest of the team, please do share and then we can close out. Who wants to go first? Fadzi, you're
Let me speak. No, so I'm very, keep saying, Like, you know, don't do something if your heart is not in it. And but I've also been hearing a lot of, like, you know, you have an obligation to this. You do accept that we have an obligation, but if that obligation gets to the point where someone is suicidal because they have an obligation, a life is worth more than whatever else money can buy. And there are cases of people who are overwhelmed by the requests from home. There are also people who, and I was just having a side conversation with Bernard Matambo, and the key thing for me is we give for ourselves. Okay, we want to be relevant in people's lives. We want to leave a mark on this world. Okay, so a lot of the things that we do, it's not because it's needed. Let's not use the other person needs it. Let's say we do this because we need to do this. And the moment you embrace that you're giving because you need to give, you want to give, I think it changes our priorities, and we start focusing on things that have value and things that will, because if you're, like I keep going back to, if your giving is not making you happy, it's not a blessing, guys. Like if you're whining and mourning and just like I do not enjoy sitting with people who complain about their giving. It's another form of black text that I am tired of.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just having a dinner with people and all they talk about is, I'm so tired of supporting my family. I'm so tired. Just don't do it, because you are taxing yourself and people you're having conversations with. So while this conversation was exciting and I'm happy to have been a part of it, let's have another one in the future to talk.
Oh,
That's it from me.
Fadzi, we didn't hear. Was it just me? I think something happened maybe with my network. You said
No, it was everybody.
conversation to talk, and then it went to talk about what? I want to hear it.
Sorry, I was saying we could have another conversation about positive giving and talk about ways that we've given, and like, you know, and flip this back text thing to having a conversation about this is done for someone and the outcome was this. This is a place where I gave and my heart smiled.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. Who wants to go next?
Should I go, Rodney?
You can go.
My new BFF. Yeah, so thank you, Fadzi, for this. Like I said, your perspective here was really important. I think what I would say is if there's another conversation, let's really make a concerted effort to invite more of those on the receiving end, because that's really where we can start having an authentic and honest conversation with ensuring that you know, everyone is on the same playing field. In my parting words, I guess I can share that, you know, my personal brand is about excellence and authenticity, you know, and it's really rooted in kindness, right? I want to ensure that I am being kind to myself, I'm being kind to others, I'm being kind to the natural environment around me. I'm very intentional about how I navigate my life through the world. A lot of it is about relationships, because I was brought up in a very communitarian spirit of Hunu, which I really believe is a key aspect of why I am so successful in the world. Now, being able to recognize that there's a post-colonial Hunu that I had to work through to walk away from this idea that kindness doesn't mean holding others accountable, holding myself accountable. Kindness can really actually be something that is very, you know, I guess holistic in its sense, that it is a give and take, but also being able to be very, you know, forthcoming about that mind, body, spirit, you know, balance, making sure that I have good mental health, but also others that are on the receiving end are also not somehow now becoming depressed because of certain decisions that are being made. So pulling everyone into a conversation, I think, while you're outside of an emergent situation is something that's going to be key. For the younger folks on the call, what I would, you know, reiterate is this idea that having conversations with others others that have gone through what you're currently going through now is really going to help you to jump from, having to grow through these pains for 10 years. You can actually get closer to that within the next few years so that you can enjoy your life wherever you are. You can actually grow more in your own career, but also at the same time really make a meaningful difference to the beloved families that we care for so much. And I'll end there.
Thank you, Molly. Samanzang.
Thank you. I mean, this has been a very insightful discussion. Now, as I said at the beginning, this has a lot more to do with who you are, who would you want to be in the future, and can you live up to that. I don't like the term obligation. I would say there's a very strong cultural expectation to help, because nobody's going to clobber you if you don't do it. It's a choice at the end of the day, and are you going to be okay with those choices? Now, how far, to what extent do you go trying to help other people? That depends on your situation, and is it the black tax that's holding you back, or are there other factors? Is it that if you hadn't sent that money, would you have done something meaningful with it? Would you have bought Heineken? I mean, buying Heineken could be an investment, as as you said in the beginning, that you could be investing in your social circles, but it could also be part of wasteful spending on our part. So it's not the case necessarily that if you don't help, you're going to do something meaningful with the money. It's not necessarily going to add to that generational wealth that this series is about. So we need to, to be true to ourselves, say, is this really the things that's holding us back? And at the same time, we also need to realize that there is a lot of abuse that takes place, and you could be very, very disappointed. And that's actually worse. That could be worse, because then it can demotivate you from helping at all. So I'd say be mindful when you do help people, because there's some people really, they're terrible. There's a reason they're in a terrible situation. In some cases, maybe it's just bad luck, but in some cases, just because they make terrible decisions. So when you try to empower them and help them out, you may not be, it shouldn't really expect to, get anything much positive out of that, because when you're looking at somebody who hasn't done much, who has made some terrible decisions, and they come to you trying to tell your story, hoping to get you to invest. It could be somebody trying to get a loan from you or anything, things that can just lead to this. So I try to avoid getting to someone. So if I'm lending money, I write it off immediately. I don't expect the money back. But what it does is that you can't then come back to me, at least for the next 2 or 3 years. I'll just tell you to get lost. So anyways, at the end of the day, you need to look at your situation and see what works. You shouldn't be afraid to draw the line where you see fit. And some people are not going to be happy about it. If you need to explain, then explain. But if you don't, or if you can, or they don't listen, then there's a problem.
Yeah, because that boundary is really yours, right? And that boundary benefits everybody. There was a question there about, pulling money together from people that have attended this talk to see what you can do as far as Project Home. What I'm actually at that stage where I'm thinking more generational wealth, to say, if people come together and put money in, let's say, into the stock market, if we'd done that last year, actually, we would have really been better off. That money goes a much longer way, because then you're actually starting first with an economy that actually is quite functional, and then taking the proceeds from that, project money to then decide what next it can be used for in the places when people need it the most. But that's just my perspective there.
Yes, and for that question, we actually have the next couple of sessions, or few sessions, because there's quite a few coming after this one. We will have one that's on investing in the stock market, and then we're going to have one that's focused on investing in alternative investments, which I think that probably warrants itself for people pulling in resources, because it's a question that has come up in a lot of circles. So that's a conversation that's coming up. So it means we will see a lot of you again to talk about that. But for today, guys, honestly, thank you so much. This has been enlightening for me. Again, don't be in this alone, because there's this whole community of people who you can talk to about your journey. We also just need to learn to be vulnerable, to talk about money amongst ourselves. I always talk about this with my friends that, you know, we all hang out and we party. I live in New York City, so like we do a lot of that. But before, we never used to talk about money. And even to this day, it's still not something that we do, to talk about how we, you know, enrich and grow our wealth as a community. So I'm really challenging us to have these conversations amongst ourselves, and let's learn from each other. The next topic is investing in real estate in Zimbabwe. The date for that is to be confirmed, but it may be July 10th. It will actually be led by Doreen Mashu, and she's lined up a very exciting panelist for us. A lot of you have asked questions about investing in real estate in Zimbabwe, so that will be the next topic. Be on the lookout for the details on that. But for now, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and to the panelists and everybody else, thank you all. Have a good day.
Tatenda.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tenda, siyabonga.
Yes.
Riyabonga.
Thank you, Rodney. That was